Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The mahogany grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, each note reverberating through the still morning air of the Calloway residence. Jack Calloway sat alone at the kitchen island, both hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee. Snow fell gently outside the bay windows, coating the perfectly manicured lawn in white. Christmas morning. The day that once filled him with childlike excitement now felt empty. Jack took a slow sip, savoring the bitter warmth as it traveled down his throat. He'd been up since 5, unable to sleep beside the stranger he called his wife. Jenny hadn't stirred when he slipped out of bed. She never did anymore. Jack ran a hand through his dark hair, slightly disheveled from a restless night. At 38, he'd built his tech company from nothing, navigated market crashes, and outmaneuvered competitors twice his age. He prided himself on reading people, on seeing through facades. Yet he'd completely missed what was right in front of him. The guest bedroom door creaked open upstairs. Jack tensed, hearing the hushed voices of Jenny and her sister Celeste. They'd stayed up late last night, drinking wine and laughing at private jokes that fell silent whenever he entered the room. God, I can't wait for him to open my gift. Jenny's voice drifted down, louder than she probably intended. The look on his face when he thinks I spend my own money on him. Jack's jaw tightened. He set down his mug with calculated precision. Does he still think you picked it out yourself? Celeste asked, her voice dripping with amusement. Please, I had his assistant buy it. Same credit card, same gift every year. Laughter, cruel and cutting, floated down the staircase. He's so pathetic, Jenny continued, her words slicing through Jack like ice. I faked every smile. Every gift was from his own credit card. He's like a trained dog. Celeste cackled. At least dogs are loyal. Oh, he's loyal all right. Loyal and blind and stupid. Jack didn't move, didn't react. Something cold and hard crystallized in his chest, replacing the dull ache that had been growing there for months. His fingers relaxed around the mug as his mind began to calculate, each thought snapping into place like puzzle pieces. The bathroom door closed upstairs, followed by the sound of the shower running. Jack pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder app, and hit record. He placed it on the counter, screen down, just as footsteps approached the stairs. Celeste appeared first, her silk pajamas rustling as she descended. She faltered slightly upon seeing Jack, but quickly recovered with a plastic smile. Merry Christmas, Jack, she said sweetly. You're up early. Jack returned the smile, all teeth and no warmth. Just enjoying the quiet. Coffee. I'd love some. Jack poured her a cup, sliding it across the counter. Sleep well. Like a baby. Celeste eyed him over the rim of her mug. You, never better. Jack leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking forward to the gift exchange. A flicker of something uncertainty perhaps crossed Celeste's face, but she masked it quickly. Jenny outdid herself this year. I'm sure she did. Jenny's footsteps pattered down the stairs, her laughter preceding her. She was already dressed in the cashmere sweater Jack had bought her last month, another purchase she'd made with his credit card, pretending it was a personal splurge. Merry Christmas, darling. She approached with arms wide open, pressing her lips against his cheek. Her perfume, the expensive one she claimed her girlfriend had gifted her, overwhelmed his senses. Merry Christmas, Jack replied, his voice steady. You opened your coffee without me. Jenny pouted, her perfectly manicured hand landing on his chest. I wanted to see your face when you tasted the new beans I got you. Jack raised an eyebrow. The ones from that shop in Portland? I bought those myself last week. A barely perceptible pause. No, these are different. Special order. I see. Jack took another sip. Should we open presents now or after breakfast? Jenny and Celeste exchanged a quick glance. After breakfast, Jenny decided. I'm starving. Did you make anything? Not yet. Why don't you both relax in the living room? I'll whip something up. As the women moved to the living room, Jack discreetly stopped the recording on his phone and slipped it into his pocket. He began preparing breakfast with mechanical precision, cracking eggs and slicing bread while his mind raced ahead, mapping out the coming days and weeks. Every laugh in the living room only hardened his resolve. Every fake smile Jenny threw his way when he served breakfast only confirmed what he now knew to be true. His marriage was a sham, orchestrated by a woman who saw him as nothing more than a bank account. "Everything okay, Jack?" Jenny asked, noticing his silence as they ate. "You seem distracted." Jack met her gaze, his eyes giving away nothing. "Just thinking about the new year. I have a feeling it's going to bring some unexpected changes." "Good ones, I hope," Celeste said, raising her mimosa. Jack picked up his glass, clinking it against hers. "Oh, definitely good. For some of us, anyway." The gift exchange went exactly as expected. Jenny fawned over the diamond bracelet Jack had surprised her with the one she'd ordered online using his account 2 weeks ago. She pretended shock and gratitude, throwing her arms around his neck and proclaiming her love. Jack opened his gift, an expensive watch he'd admired months ago, and feigned surprise. "How did you know?" "I pay attention," Jenny said, looking pleased with herself. "Don't I always know exactly what you want?" Jack slipped the watch on his wrist, his smile never reaching his eyes. "You certainly do." Later, when everyone had left and Jenny was napping upstairs, Jack sat alone in his home office. He removed the watch, examining it in the fading afternoon light. The ultimate symbol of his blind trust, purchased with his own money while Jenny took credit for the thoughtfulness. He opened his laptop and began methodically documenting every financial transaction from the past 5 years. Every gift she'd given him, every trip she'd saved up for, every donation to charity she'd made in both their names. Why evening. He had a comprehensive record of Jenny's deception. Now he just needed to wait for the right moment. He closed the laptop as Jenny called him for dinner, his face settling into the mask of contentment he'd worn for years. But behind the mask, Jack Calloway was already gone. In his place stood a man with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. Jack stared at the ceiling of their bedroom, listening to Jenny's even breathing beside him. The digital clock on a nightstand cast an eerie blue glow across the room. 3:17 a.m. Sleep eluded him for the third night in a row. Christmas had come and gone. The house was quiet again, Celeste having returned to her apartment downtown. On the surface, everything had returned to normal. Jack went to work. Jenny attended her charity functions. They ate dinner together, exchanged pleasantries, and slept side by side. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. Jack replayed memories in his mind, re-examining them with fresh eyes. The surprise weekend in Napa Valley that Jenny had planned for their anniversary, he'd later discovered charges on his credit card for the exact amount. The thoughtful birthday gifts that somehow always aligned with items he'd mentioned wanting items his assistant had doubtlessly been instructed to purchase. Every memory he treasured was tainted. Every moment he thought was genuine was calculated. Every "I love you" was a transaction. Beside him, Jenny stirred slightly, turning over in her sleep. Jack studied her face in the dim light. She was beautiful, that much was true. Her honey blonde hair splayed across the pillow, her features soft in repose. When they'd met 7 years ago, that beauty had captivated him. Now he wondered what else had been an act from the beginning. Had she ever loved him? Had there been a moment, however brief, when her smile was real? It didn't matter. Not anymore. Jack carefully slid out of bed, padding silently to the bathroom. He closed the door before turning on the light, wincing at the sudden brightness. The man in the mirror looked tired, the skin around his eyes tight with fatigue and stress. But his gaze was clear, focused, determined. He splashed cold water on his face, letting the shock of it chase away the last tendrils of doubt. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about justice. Jack wasn't a vengeful man by nature. He prided himself on fairness in business and in his personal life. But this betrayal cut too deep. It wasn't just that Jenny had used him, it was the gleeful cruelty with which she'd mocked him behind his back. The casual disdain in her voice when she called him pathetic. No, this wouldn't end with a simple divorce. A clean break. A division of assets. Jenny deserved more than that. She deserved to feel what he felt now. Jack dried his face and returned to the bedroom, settling back into bed with careful movements. Jenny didn't stir. He watched the rise and fall of her chest, his mind crystallizing around a single thought: retribution. Cold, calculated, and complete. Morning came too quickly. Jack rose with the alarm, moving through his routine with practiced efficiency. Shower, shave, dress. He selected a charcoal suit, one of Jenny's favorites, and the watch she'd given him for Christmas. Downstairs, he prepared coffee for both of them, arranging her preferred breakfast of avocado toast and poached eggs on the island counter. When Jenny appeared, wrapped in her silk robe, he greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. "You made breakfast," she observed, surprise evident in her voice. "What's the occasion?" Jack shrugged, sliding a coffee mug toward her. "No occasion. Just felt like it." Jenny studied him for a moment, a slight furrow between her brows. "You're being weird." "Am I?" Jack took a sip of his coffee, maintaining eye contact over the rim. "How so?" "I don't know. You seem different." Jack smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "New year, new me, I guess." Jenny seemed to accept this, turning her attention to her breakfast. "Don't forget we have dinner with the Hendersons tonight. 7 o'clock. "I remember," Jack said, though he had no intention of attending. "I'll meet you there." "Perfect." Jenny scrolled through her phone, already disengaged from the conversation. "Oh, and I might do some shopping today. That new boutique on Fifth Avenue opened yesterday. Buy something nice," Jack said, knowing full well that she would with his money. It would be the last shopping spree on his dime. "I have to run. Early meeting." He kissed her goodbye, the gesture mechanical. Jenny barely looked up from her phone in his car. Jack released the breath he'd been holding. The facade was exhausting, but necessary. For his plan to work, Jenny couldn't suspect anything until it was too late. Instead of heading to his office downtown, Jack drove to a modest building in a quieter part of the city. The sign outside read Caldwell Security Solutions. Mira Caldwell greeted him at the door, her sharp eyes taking in his appearance with a critical gaze. They'd been friends since college, before either of them had built their respective businesses. While Jack had pursued tech, Mira had leveraged her cybersecurity expertise into a thriving private security firm. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting, ushering him inside. "Good to see you too," Jack replied, following her through the reception area to her private office. Myra's office reflected her personality. Efficient, no nonsense, with state-of-the-art technology integrated seamlessly into the minimalist design. She gestured for him to sit while she closed the door. "So," she said, taking the seat opposite him, "what's this urgent meeting about? Your message was cryptic, even for you." Jack rubbed a hand over his face. "I need your help, obviously." "With what?" "Jenny." Myra's expression hardened. She'd never been Jenny's biggest fan, though she'd kept her reservations mostly to herself out of respect for Jack. "What about her?" Jack pulled out his phone, finding the recording from Christmas morning. He placed it on the desk between them and hit play. Myra's face transformed as she listened, shock giving way to cold anger. When the recording ended, she let out a low whistle. "That manipulative witch." "That's putting it mildly," Jack said, pocketing his phone again. "So what now?" "Divorce. Eventually." Jack leaned forward, his voice steady. "But first, I want her to understand exactly what she's losing. I want her to feel what I felt when I heard those words." Mira studied him, her expression unreadable. "You're not just walking away from this, are you?" "Not a chance." A slow smile spread across Myra's face. "Good, because if you were, I'd have to question everything I know about you." She leaned back in her chair. "What do you need from me?" "Technical expertise, financial tracking, and absolute discretion. You have all three." Myra's tone was firm. "What's the plan?" For the next hour, Jack outlined his strategy. Mira interrupted occasionally with questions or suggestions, her analytical mind fine-tuning the details. By the time they finished, the plan was comprehensive, methodical, and airtight. "This won't be pretty," Mira warned as Jack prepared to leave. "She'll fight back when she realizes what's happening. I'm counting on it." Jack's expression was resolute. "But she doesn't know what she's up against." "No," Mira agreed, a glint of fierce loyalty in her eyes. "She really doesn't." As Jack drove back to his office, A weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. The path ahead was clear now. The next 2 weeks would require patience and precision, but the outcome would be worth it. For the first time since Christmas morning, Jack allowed himself a genuine smile. Jenny had no idea what was coming, and that was exactly how he wanted it. The following days unfolded with methodical precision. Jack maintained his routine, leaving for work at the same time each morning, returning home for dinner each evening. To all outward appearances, nothing had changed. Behind the scenes, however, Jack moved with surgical precision. First came the financial separation. In his downtown office, Jack contacted his bank and initiated the creation of new accounts under his name alone. His corporate attorney, bound by confidentiality, drew up the necessary paperwork to remove Jenny's access to his business assets access she'd insisted on for tax purposes early in their marriage. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Calloway?" the attorney asked, eyebrows raised. "It's quite sudden." "I'm sure," Jack replied, his signature flowing across the documents with unwavering conviction. Next, he systematically transferred funds from their joint accounts, leaving just enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Credit cards were quietly canceled, with new ones issued solely in his name. The house title, which had been in both their names, was transferred to him alone, a process simplified by the fact that he'd paid for it entirely. Each night, after Jenny fell asleep, Jack documented her spending, creating a comprehensive record of financial abuse. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 5 years, Jenny had spent over $2 million of his money while contributing nothing to their household. During the day, Jack was the perfect husband. He complimented Jenny's new purchases without comment on their cost. He agreed to her social plans without hesitation. He even brought her flowers one evening, roses, her favorite. "What are these for?" she asked, surprised. "Do I need a reason?" Jack countered, watching her search for an ulterior motive. Jenny seemed unsettled by his attention, which only confirmed his suspicions. She was accustomed to taking, not receiving, genuine affection. 10 days into his plan, Jack met Mira for lunch at a discreet restaurant across town. "Everything's in place," he told her over grilled salmon and sparkling water. "The bank accounts, the credit cards, the property transfers. All that's left is her phone and email." Mira nodded, her expression serious. "I've got that covered. The spyware is ready. But Jack, once we install it, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" Jack didn't hesitate. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." That evening, while Jenny attended a charity auction, an event Jack had encouraged her to go to alone, Mira arrived at the house. Together, they accessed Jenny's personal laptop and phone, installing sophisticated monitoring software that would allow them to track her communications. "This feels invasive," Mira commented as they worked, though her fingers never paused on the keyboard. "More invasive than discovering your wife has been mocking you behind your back for years," Jack countered, keeping watch at the door. Mira conceded with a nod. "Fair point. Just remember, whatever we find, you can't act on it immediately. The timing has to be perfect." "I know." Jack checked his watch. "We have about an hour before she's back." "How much longer?" "Almost done." Mira made a few final keystrokes. "There. Everything's set up to forward to the secure server. You'll be able to access all her communications from the portal I created for you." They cleared away any evidence of their tampering just as the sound of a car pulling into the driveway reached them. Mira slipped out the back door with a quick, "Call me when it's time." Jack settled in the living room with a book, the picture of domestic tranquility, as Jenny entered with shopping bags dangling from both arms. "Successful auction?" he asked, looking up with fabricated interest. Jenny beamed, dropping her purchases on the sofa. "Very. And the new Gucci collection was to die for. I may have gone a bit overboard." She flashed him a practiced, apologetic smile, the one she used when she wanted to disarm him after a particularly expensive spree. Jack returned the smile, marveling at how easily he could see through her now. "You work hard for these charities. You deserve to treat yourself." Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced by satisfaction. She was used to manipulating him with guilt, not receiving validation for her spending. "Well, thank you for understanding." Always, Jack replied, turning back to his book. That night, as Jenny slept beside him, Jack reviewed the first batch of data from the monitoring software. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions and steeled his resolve. Emails to Celeste mocking his business decisions. Text messages to friends about how she'd manipulated him into buying her a new car. Photos sent to her sister of price tags from designer clothes, accompanied by laughing emojis and the caption, "Guess who's paying?" The final piece of evidence came 3 days later. An email from Jenny to her attorney, dated 6 months earlier, inquiring about divorce proceedings and how to maximize her settlement. "I need to know exactly what I'm entitled to," she'd written. "He's worth approximately $45 million. I want at least half." Jack forwarded the email to his own attorney with a brief message. "Add this to the file." That evening, he received a text from Celeste. "Dinner at our place tomorrow night? Jenny's making her famous risotto." Jack texted back, "Wouldn't miss it." The pieces were falling into place. One more day of playing the dutiful husband, and then the reckoning would begin. The following morning, Jack initiated the final phase of his financial strategy. With a series of carefully planned transactions, he froze Jenny's access to all remaining shared assets. By noon, her credit card would be declined. By evening, her car lease would be flagged for termination. By morning, she would discover that the house she'd been so proud to show off to her friends was now solely in his name. As he finished the last transaction, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "All set on my end. The recording is ready whenever you need it." Jack typed back, "Tomorrow. Be ready." That night, over Jenny's famous risotto, prepared by the private chef she'd hired with Jack's money, Jack played his role one last time. He complimented the food, engaged with Celeste's shallow conversation, and pretended not to notice Jenny's hand lingering on his arm, a gesture of false intimacy she reserved for nights when she planned to ask for something expensive. "I've been thinking," she said as they drove home, her voice taking on the sweet tone she used when manipulating him. "We should plan a trip for our anniversary. Maybe the Maldives? You've been working so hard, and we both deserve a break." Jack kept his eyes on the road, his expression neutral. "That sounds nice. Why don't you look into it tomorrow?" Jenny's smile widened. "The trap successfully set. I already have. I found a most amazing private villa. I could book it tonight if you want." "Perfect," Jack said, knowing she'd never get the chance. "Use the platinum card." Jenny squeezed his arm, mistaking his compliance for continued ignorance. "You're the best, you know that." Jack smiled thinly. "So I've been told." The next morning, Jack left for work earlier than usual, pressing a kiss to Jenny's forehead as she slept. It would be the last time he touched her with anything resembling affection. At precisely 10:03 a.m., his phone lit up with the first of what would become a barrage of messages. "Jack, there's something wrong with my card. It was declined at Neiman Marcus." He didn't respond. At 11:17 a.m. "Jack, all the cards are declining. What's going on?" Still, he remained silent. At 12:42 p.m. "I just got a call from the bank. They said you removed me from the accounts. This isn't funny. Call me immediately." Jack turned off notifications and focused on his work. The storm was brewing, exactly as planned. At 3:28 p.m., his phone vibrated with a text from Celeste. She's screaming. "Please answer her." Jack smiled, checking his watch. It was time that he picked up his coat, nodded to his assistant, and headed out of the office. Not toward home, but toward the beginning of his new life, one in which Jenny Calloway would learn exactly what it meant to betray the wrong man. When Jack pulled into the driveway of what had been their shared home, Jenny's car was parked at a haphazard angle, one wheel on the immaculate lawn. The front door stood ajar. Inside, the sound of frantic movement echoed through the foyer. Jack stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. He followed the noise to the master bedroom, where Jenny was tearing through the closet, pulling out drawers and emptying jewelry boxes. Celeste stood by the window, arms crossed, face tight with worry. "What exactly are you looking for?" Jack asked, his voice calm. Both women whirled around. Jenny's face was blotchy, her makeup smeared from tears of frustration. Celeste's expression hardened at the sight of him. "You," Jenny hissed, stalking toward him. "What have you done?" Jack leaned against the doorframe, hands in his pockets. I've made some financial adjustments. Nothing for you to worry about. Nothing to. Jenny spluttered, her hands clenching into fists. Every card is declined. The bank says I don't have access to our accounts. The car dealership called saying the lease is being terminated. What the hell is going on? I think you know exactly what's going on. Jack replied, his voice level. Or should I play the recording for you? Jenny froze. What recording? Jack pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it up. Her own voice filled the room. He's so pathetic. I faked every smile. Every gift was from his own credit card. He's like a trained dog. The color drained from Jenny's face. Beside her, Celeste shifted uncomfortably. You were spying on me. Jenny's voice was small, the outrage giving way to calculation. No, Jack corrected. I was having breakfast in my own kitchen when you and your sister decided to mock me on Christmas morning. I didn't need to spy, you were careless. Jenny's expression shifted, her shoulders straightening as she transitioned to a familiar strategy. Her voice softened, her eyes filling with tears. Jack, you know I didn't mean any of that. It was just silly sister talk. We say things we don't mean all the time. Save it. Jack cut her off. I've seen the emails, Jenny. The texts. The divorce inquiry from 6 months ago. I know exactly who you are and what you've been doing. Jenny's facade cracked. You went through my private emails? After discovering my wife of 7 years has been using me as an ATM while laughing behind my back? Yes, I did. This is illegal, Celeste interjected, finding her voice. You can't just cut her off like this. She's entitled to... To what? Jack turned his gaze to her. To money she didn't earn? To credit cards she isn't paying for? To a house she contributed nothing toward? Please, enlighten me on what Jenny is entitled to. Celeste's mouth snapped shut. That Jenny's approach changed again, anger replacing the false tears. I'll take you to court. You think I don't know my rights? Half of everything is mine. Good luck with that, Jack interrupted, his tone still measured. Especially after the judge sees evidence of financial exploitation, emails planning how to maximize a divorce settlement. And of course, the recording where you openly mock your husband while admitting to faking affection for material gain. Jenny's eyes darted to Celeste, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. You can't do this to me. I'm your wife. In name only, it seems. Jack straightened from the doorframe. You have until tomorrow to pack your personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, whatever you brought into this marriage. After that, the locks will be changed. Where am I supposed to go? Jenny demanded, panic edging into her voice. That's not my concern. Jack turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and don't bother trying to use the cards to book a hotel. As I said, they've been canceled. Jenny lunged forward, grabbing his arm. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too. Jack looked down at her hand, then back to her face. Check the property records. As of yesterday, it's solely in my name, just like the cars, the vacation property, and every other asset you thought you had claimed to. He gently removed her hand from his arm. I'll sleep at a hotel tonight to give you privacy for packing. I suggest you use the time wisely. As he walked toward the door, Jenny's voice rose to a shriek behind him. It's just a misunderstanding. You'll come around. You always do. Jack didn't respond. In the hallway, Celeste caught up to him, her voice lowered. If you believe that, you're dumber than I thought, she muttered, clearly intended for Jenny's ears. Then, to Jack, this isn't over. You're right, Jack agreed. It's just beginning. He left them there, Jenny's sobs and curses following him down the stairs. In the driveway, he paused to send a text to Mira. Phase 1 complete. She knows. The response came seconds later. How'd she take it? Exactly as expected, Jack replied. See you tomorrow for Phase 2. 3 days later, Jack straightened his bow tie in front of the mirror at Myra's apartment. The annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the social event of the season, a gathering of the city's elite that Jenny had insisted they attend every year. It was her favorite opportunity to flaunt their wealth and her status as Mrs. Calloway. This year would be different. Ready for this? Mira asked, appearing in the doorway in a sleek black gown, her normally practical ponytail replaced by an elegant updo. Jack turned from the mirror, taking in her transformation from security expert to socialite. More than ready. You clean up nice, by the way. Mira rolled her eyes. Don't sound so surprised. I do own clothes that aren't tactical gear. Could have fooled me. Jack checked his watch, a different one from Jenny's gift. We should go. I want to arrive after she does. You're sure she'll be there? Mira asked, collecting her clutch from the sideboard. Positive. Celeste texted me again yesterday, trying to arrange a calm discussion about our misunderstanding. When I didn't respond, she mentioned they'd both be at the gala and hoped to see me there. Jack's smile was cold. Jenny hasn't given up. She thinks she can win me back in public, where I won't make a scene. Little does she know, Mira murmured. The drive to the historic Bellingham Hotel was quiet, each of them focused on the evening ahead. Jack had invested too much in this moment to rush it. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. As they pulled up to the valet stand, Jack caught a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror. The man who stared back was composed, determined, unrecognizable from the devastated husband of just 2 weeks ago. It wasn't just anger driving him now, it was a bone-deep need for justice. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewels of the city's wealthy. Jack and Mira paused at the entrance, scanning the crowd. It didn't take long to spot Jenny, resplendent in a red gown Jack had bought her for last year's gala. She stood near the champagne fountain, deep in conversation with the wife of the hospital's chief surgeon. Celeste hovered nearby, her expression anxious as she surveyed the room. She spotted Jack first, nudging her sister and murmuring something in her ear. Jenny's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Jack's across the room. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jenny excused herself from her conversation and began making her way toward them, her smile fixed in place. The perfect society wife, ready to put on a show. Incoming, Mira muttered under her breath. 3 o'clock. I see her, Jack replied, straightening his shoulders. Stay close. Jenny reached them, her perfume wafting over them as she leaned in to press air kisses to Jack's cheeks. Darling, I was worried you wouldn't make it. Jack stepped back, just enough to make her gesture awkward. I wouldn't miss it. Jenny's smile faltered slightly before she turned to Mira, her eyes narrowing. Mira, what a surprise to see you here. Jack invited me, Mira replied smoothly. We're quite close these days. A flash of something jealousy, perhaps, or calculation crossed Jenny's face. She linked her arm through Jack's, her grip tight. Well, you simply must excuse us. Jack and I have people to greet, don't we, darling? Jack disengaged himself from her hold. Actually, I'm here with Mira tonight. The smile remained fixed on Jenny's face, but her eyes hardened. Don't be silly. We always attend these functions together. Things change, Jack said simply. Jenny glanced around, clearly aware of nearby eyes and ears. When she spoke again, her voice was low, urgent. Jack, we need to talk. Privately. This has gone on long enough. I agree, Jack replied, which is why I've arranged for a special announcement later this evening. Alarm flickered across Jenny's features. What announcement? You'll see. Jack offered his arm to Mira. Shall we get a drink? As they walked away, Jenny called after them, her voice rising slightly. This is childish, Jack. Whatever game you're playing, it's beneath you. Jack didn't respond, guiding Mira toward the bar at the opposite side of the room. Whispers followed in their wake, the crowd already sensing drama unfolding. She's spooked, Mira observed, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Good, Jack replied. She should be. For the next hour, they circulated through the crowd, Jack accepting condolences from those who had heard rumors of trouble in his marriage, deflecting questions with practiced ease. All the while, he kept Jenny in his peripheral vision. She was doing damage control, moving from group to group, laughing too loudly, touching people's arms as she leaned in to share confidences. When the event coordinator signaled that dinner would be served soon, Jack nodded to Mira. It's time. They approached the stage where the charity's director was preparing to welcome everyone. Jack spoke briefly with her, showing her something on his phone. The woman's eyebrows rose, but she nodded, stepping aside to allow him access to the microphone. That a hush fell over the room as Jack took the stage, adjusting the microphone to his height. Good evening, everyone, He began, his voice clear and steady. First, I want to thank you all for your continued support of the Children's Hospital. The work they do is invaluable, and your generosity makes it possible. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Jack waited for it to subside before continuing. Many of you know my wife, Jenny, he said, his gaze finding her in the crowd. She stood frozen, champagne glass halfway to her lips. What you may not know is that we're going through some changes in our relationship. Murmurs spread through the audience. Jenny's face drained of color. I wasn't going to address this publicly, Jack continued, but Jenny has always believed in transparency. Haven't you, dear? All eyes turned to Jenny, who forced a brittle smile. Jack, this isn't the place. I think it's exactly the place, Jack interrupted, his voice still pleasant. After all, these are our friends. People who have welcomed us into their homes, their charity boards, their social circles. They deserve to know the truth. He nodded to Mira, who pressed a button on her phone. A moment later, the speakers around the ballroom crackled to life, and Jenny's voice filled the room. He's so pathetic. I faked every smile. Every gift was from his own credit card. He's like a trained dog. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Jenny stood rooted to the spot, her face a mask of horror. At least dogs are loyal, came Celeste's voice. Oh, he's loyal all right. Loyal and blind and stupid. Jack let the recording play for a few more seconds before signaling Mira to stop it. The silence that followed was deafening. As you can imagine, Jack said into the microphone, his voice now carrying an edge, discovering that your wife of 7 years sees you as nothing more than a bank account is enlightening. Especially when you also discover she's been planning to divorce you and take half of everything you've built. Jenny finally unfroze, rushing toward the stage. He's twisting everything. That recording it's not what it sounds like, isn't it? Jack countered, holding up his phone. Because I have dozens more just like it. Texts, emails, voice messages, all painting a very clear picture of who Jenny Calloway really is. The crowd parted as Jenny reached the edge of the stage, her face contorted with rage and humiliation. You had no right. Actually, I had every right, Jack replied, his voice hardening. Just as I had every right to protect what I've worked for from someone who saw me as nothing more than a meal ticket. He addressed the room once more. I apologize for the dramatic interruption to what should be a celebration of the hospital's work. My donation this year will be twice my usual amount in my name alone to make up for it. Applause broke out, uncertain at first, then growing stronger. Jack stepped away from the microphone, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces in the crowd, many of whom were now looking at Jenny with undisguised disdain. As he descended the steps from the stage, Jenny grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. You've ruined me, she hissed, tears streaming down her face, smearing her perfect makeup. Do you have any idea what you've done? Jack looked down at her hand, then back to her face. I've revealed the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. He gently but firmly removed her hand from his arm for the second time that week. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Jenny. I hear the salmon is excellent. With that, he walked away, Mira falling into step beside him. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, the scandal already spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. That went well, Mira commented as they collected their coats from the valet. Jack watched as Jenny pushed through the crowd toward the exit, Celeste hurrying after her. It's not over yet. No, Mira agreed, a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. But it's a damn good start. The day after the gala, Jack sat in Myra's office, watching the fallout unfold on social media. Videos of Jenny's humiliation had spread rapidly, commentary ranging from sympathy for Jack to vicious mockery of Jenny. Her carefully cultivated image as the perfect society wife had crumbled overnight. She's been calling nonstop, Jack said, scrolling through the missed calls on his phone. 37 times since last night. Mira looked up from her computer. And Celeste. Radio silence. Jack set his phone down. Which is interesting. Maybe she's regrouping, Mira suggested, turning her monitor so Jack could see the screen. Or maybe this is why. The screen showed Celeste's Instagram account. Her most recent post, timestamped just 30 minutes earlier, was a lengthy statement distancing herself from Jenny's actions. "While I love my sister," Jack read aloud, "I cannot condone deception and manipulation. I was unaware of the extent of her plans and am deeply disappointed to have been associated with them in any way. To Jack and anyone else hurt by this situation, I offer my sincerest apologies." Jack let out a dry laugh. "Convenient timing. Rats fleeing a sinking ship," Mira agreed. "She knows Jenny is toxic now. Social suicide by association. I expected as much." Jack leaned back in his chair, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over him. Loyalty isn't a family trait with them. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Cafe at 2 p.m. Come alone." Celeste, Jack showed the message to Mira. "It's a trap," she said immediately. "Jenny will be there too, trying to ambush you." "Probably," Jack agreed. "But I'll go anyway. I want to hear what she has to say." Mira frowned. "At least let me come with you. I can sit at another table, keep watch." "Fine," Jack conceded, "but stay out of sight unless necessary." The Riverside Cafe was busy with the lunch crowd when Jack arrived at precisely 2 p.m. He spotted Celeste immediately, sitting alone at a corner table, nervously shredding a napkin. There was no sign of Jenny. Jack approached, remaining standing as Celeste looked up. "This better be worth my time. Please sit." Celeste gestured to the chair opposite her. "I promise it's just me." Jack sat, maintaining a clear view of the door. "I'm listening." Celeste took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize. What you heard that morning, what I said, it was wrong." "Yes, it was," Jack agreed, his tone neutral. "But I doubt you asked me here just to apologize." "No," Celeste admitted, glancing down at her hands. I have information. About Jenny. Things you should know before this goes any further." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "She's desperate. She's been calling everyone we know, try to secure loans, looking for places to stay." Celeste looked up, meeting his gaze. "No one will help her. After what happened at the gala, they're all afraid of being associated with her." "And you?" Jack asked. "Are you afraid too?" "I'm being practical," Celeste replied, straightening her shoulders. "Jenny made her bed. I'm not going down with her. So this meeting is what? Your attempt to separate yourself from her? Make sure I know you're not on her side anymore." "Partly," Celeste admitted, "but also to warn you. She's talking about going to the press, spinning a story about emotional abuse, claiming you cut her off as punishment for wanting independence." Jack nodded, unsurprised. "Let her try. I have evidence to counter every claim she might make." "There's more." Celeste hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. "The divorce inquiry from 6 months ago, that wasn't the first. She's been planning this for years." Jack's expression remained impassive, though something cold settled in his stomach. "Go on." "She has a separate email account, one you don't know about. She's been corresponding with divorce attorneys since your second anniversary, trying to figure out the best time to leave you for maximum financial gain. And you know this how? Because she copied me on some of the emails." Celeste reached into her bag, pulling out a folder. "I saved them. I didn't agree with what she was doing, but she's my sister. I kept her secrets. Until now." She pushed the folder across the table. Jack opened it, scanning the emails inside. They were damning detailed discussions of Jack's assets, strategies for hiding money, considerations of timing based on projected growth of his company. "Why are you giving me these?" Jack asked, closing the folder. "Self-preservation," Celeste replied bluntly. "Jenny's going to try to drag me into this, claim I encouraged her. I need you to know I didn't." "Even though you did," Jack pointed out. "You may not have initiated it, but you certainly reinforced her behavior." Celeste had the grace to look ashamed. "I know, and I'll have to live with that. But I won't let her destroy me along with herself." "So you're throwing your sister under the bus to save yourself," Jack summarized, tucking the folder under his arm. "Guess loyalty isn't a family trait." "No," Celeste agreed quietly. "But betrayal definitely is." The corner of Jack's mouth twitched. "At least you're honest about it." He stood, preparing to leave, when Celeste caught his sleeve. "There's one more thing." She swallowed hard. "She's been seeing someone. For about a year now." Jack stilled. "Who?" "Ryan Mitchell." The name hit Jack like a physical blow. Ryan Mitchell was his former business partner, the man who had walked away from their startup just before it took off, selling his shares for a fraction of what they were now worth. "You're lying," Jack said, though he already knew she wasn't. "Check her secret email," Celeste replied. "There are pictures, messages, hotel receipts." Jack nodded once, sharply, and turned to leave. "Jack," Celeste called after him. "For what it's worth, I am sorry." He paused, looking back at her. "Save your apologies for someone who believes them." Outside, Mira was waiting by his car. One look at his face told her everything she needed to know. "That bad?" she asked as they got in. "Worse," Jack replied, handing her the folder. "Turns out Jenny's betrayal goes deeper than I thought." As Mira read through the emails, her expression hardened. "That manipulative conniving. She's been sleeping with Ryan." Jack cut her off, his voice flat, that Myra's head snapped up. "Mitchell? Your ex-partner?" "The same." Jack started the car, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Celeste says it's been going on for about a year." "Jesus, Jack." Mira reached over, placing a hand on his arm. "I'm sorry." Jack shook his head. "Don't be. This just makes what comes next even easier." "And what exactly comes next?" Mira asked, though the determination in Jack's eyes already told her the answer. "The final phase," Jack said, pulling away from the curb. "It's time to end this once and for all." That evening, as news of Celeste's betrayal spread through their social circle, Jack received a single text from Jenny. "You've turned my own sister against me. I hope you're happy." For the first time in weeks, Jack smiled genuinely as he typed his response. "I didn't turn anyone against you, Jenny. You did that all on your own." He sent the message, then blocked her number. The last tie severed, the last connection cut. Tomorrow, they would meet in court. And there, before a judge and the legal system she had hoped to manipulate, Jenny would face the final consequence of her actions. Jack was ready. More than ready, he was resolute. The county courthouse stood imposing against the clear blue sky, its stone facade projecting permanence and authority. Jack straightened his tie as he climbed the steps, Mira at his side, his attorney a few paces ahead, carrying a briefcase filled with evidence meticulously gathered over the past month. "Ready for this?" Mira asked, her voice low. Jack nodded. "More than ready." Inside, the marble hallway echoed with footsteps and hushed conversations. They found the assigned courtroom and took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Jack had filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial exploitation, bold claims that put the burden of proof on him, but claims he was fully prepared to substantiate. At precisely 9:30 a.m., the courtroom doors opened again, and Jenny entered, flanked by her attorney, a shark-like woman known for aggressive tactics in high-profile divorces. Jenny herself looked different than Jack had ever seen her. Gone was the designer clothing, replaced by a conservative navy suit that screamed respectability. Her makeup was subdued, her hair pulled back in a simple knot. She dressed to play the wronged wife, the woman victimized by a controlling husband. Their eyes met across the room. Jenny's gaze hardened, then shifted into something almost pleading. Jack looked away. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Eleanor Winters entered the courtroom. Known for her no-nonsense approach and fair rulings, Judge Winters had been Jack's hope when filing. She had a reputation for seeing through manipulation and focusing strictly on facts. "Be seated," she said, settling behind the bench and reviewing the papers before her. "Calloway versus Calloway. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Are both parties present with counsel?" Confirmations came from both tables. "Very well." Judge Winters looked up, her keen eyes moving between Jack and Jenny. "Before we begin formal proceedings, I want to be clear about my expectations. This court has no interest in personal vendettas or public spectacles. We will deal with facts, evidence, and the law. Nothing more, nothing less. Is that understood?" Both parties nodded. "Mr. Calloway, as the petitioner, you're claiming adultery and financial exploitation as grounds for divorce. You're also requesting an uneven distribution of assets. Please present your case." Jack's attorney, Martin Wells, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, over the next hour, We will demonstrate a clear pattern of financial abuse and marital infidelity by the respondent, Mrs. Jenny Calloway. We have documentation of unauthorized spending, evidence of a long-term extramarital affair, and proof that Mrs. Calloway entered this marriage with the explicit intent to eventually divorce Mr. Calloway and claim half his assets. Jenny shifted in her seat, her composure slipping momentarily. Martin proceeded to outline the evidence, methodically bank statements showing Jenny's excessive spending, emails discussing her plans for divorce, the recording from Christmas morning, and finally, the communications between Jenny and Ryan Mitchell that Celeste had provided. As each piece of evidence was presented, Jenny's face grew paler. Her attorney scribbled notes furiously, occasionally leaning over to whisper in Jenny's ear. When Martin concluded his presentation, Judge Winters turned to Jenny's attorney. "Ms. Reeves, your response?" Patricia Reeves stood, adjusting her glasses. "Your Honor, while Mr. Calloway has presented a narrative that paints my client in a negative light, I would argue that this evidence has been selectively chosen to support his claims while ignoring crucial context." She walked toward the bench, her voice taking on a sympathetic tone. Mrs. Calloway acknowledges that her words in the recording were inappropriate and hurtful. She spoke out of frustration after years in a controlling relationship where her every expenditure was monitored and criticized. The so-called excessive spending was within the lifestyle Mr. Calloway established and encouraged until he decided to punish my client by cutting her off completely without warning. Jack clenched his jaw but remained silent as Reeves continued. As for the alleged affair, we have only circumstantial evidence at best. The emails and messages could easily be interpreted as a close friendship that Mr. Calloway, in his jealousy and controlling nature, has misconstrued. Reeves returned to her table, picking up a folder. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have documentation showing that Mr. Calloway systematically isolated Mrs. Calloway from financial resources that she was legally entitled to access as a spouse. His actions in recent weeks, freezing joint accounts, canceling credit cards, transferring property titles constitute financial abuse under family law statutes." She approached the bench again, handing the folder to the judge. Mrs. Calloway is not seeking vengeance. She merely wants a fair division of marital assets and appropriate support as she rebuilds her life after 7 years of marriage to a controlling, vindictive man who has now orchestrated a campaign to destroy her reputation and leave her destitute. Judge Winters accepted the folder, her expression unreadable as she reviewed its contents. "Mr. Wells, your rebuttal?" Martin rose again. "Your Honor, Ms. Reeves' characterization of my client as controlling is directly contradicted by the evidence we've presented. Far from monitoring Mrs. Calloway's spending, Mr. Calloway gave her unrestricted access to his accounts for years, despite her contribution to the household income being effectively zero." He approached the bench with another document. "This is a complete financial history of the marriage. You'll note that Mrs. Calloway has not held employment since before their wedding, has contributed nothing to household expenses, and has spent approximately $2.3 million of Mr. Calloway's earnings over 7 years on purely personal luxury items." Martin then addressed the affair allegations. "As for the claim that the relationship with Mr. Mitchell was merely a friendship, I direct the court's attention to Exhibit C, which contains explicit messages and hotel receipts that leave little doubt about the nature of their relationship." Judge Winters reviewed the new evidence, her expression growing more severe. "Ms. Reeves, your response to these specific points?" Reeves hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the detailed financial breakdown. "Your Honor, a marriage is a partnership. Mrs. Calloway supported her husband's career in non-financial ways, hosting business dinners, attending events, maintaining their social connections. These contributions have value even if they don't appear on a balance sheet." "And the affair?" Judge Winters pressed. "My client admits to a lapse in judgment regarding Mr. Mitchell. However, this occurred only after the marriage had already deteriorated significantly due to Mr. Calloway's emotional unavailability." Jack almost laughed at the absurdity of the claim. Reeves was grasping at straws, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. Judge Winters closed the folders before her, removing her glasses. I've heard enough from counsel. I'd like to hear directly from the parties. She turned to Jack. Mr. Calloway, please approach. Jack rose and stood before the bench. Mr. Calloway, in your own words, what are you seeking from these proceedings? Jack met the judge's gaze directly. Your Honor, I'm seeking a clean break. A divorce that acknowledges the reality of my marriage, that it was based on deception from the beginning. I don't want vengeance. I want justice. Mrs. Calloway entered this marriage with the explicit intention of eventually divorcing me for financial gain. She contributed nothing financially, extracted millions for her personal use, engaged in an affair with my former business partner, and mocked me behind my back throughout our relationship. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I built my company from nothing. Every dollar that funded our lifestyle came from my work, my risk-taking, my sacrifice. Mrs. Calloway was not a partner in any meaningful sense. She was, as her own words confirm, using me for financial benefit while giving nothing genuine in return. Judge Winters nodded. And what specific distribution of assets are you proposing? I propose that Mrs. Calloway retain the personal items she brought into the marriage and any gifts given specifically to her. All business assets, real estate, investments, and accounts should remain with me. I am not seeking any form of restitution for the money she's already spent. Thank you, Mr. Calloway. Judge Winters turned to Jenny. Mrs. Calloway, please approach. Jenny rose, smoothing her skirt before taking Jack's place before the bench. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, her posture carefully vulnerable. Mrs. Calloway, what is your response to your husband's characterization of your marriage? Jenny swallowed visibly. It's a cruel distortion, Your Honor. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I said hurtful things in a moment of frustration. But our marriage wasn't a sham. I loved Jack. I supported his dreams, stood by him when his company was struggling, endured lonely nights while he worked late. She glanced at Jack, her voice breaking slightly. The emails about divorce, I was upset, feeling neglected. I never intended to follow through. It was a way of processing my frustrations. A stupid, thoughtless mistake. Judge Winters studied her. And Mr. Mitchell? Jenny looked down. Another mistake. One I deeply regret. But it happened only after Jack and I had grown apart, after he'd become so consumed with work that I felt invisible. And the financial matters. Judge Winters pressed. The evidence suggests significant personal spending on your part with minimal contribution. Jack encouraged my spending, Jenny insisted. He wanted me to look a certain way, maintain certain appearances for his business associates. I was in many ways an extension of his brand. When potential clients came to dinner, they saw a successful man with a well-dressed wife and a beautiful home. My job was to maintain that image. Judge Winters leaned back. And what are you seeking from these proceedings? I'm not asking for half of everything, as Jack seems to believe, Jenny said, her voice steadying. But I'm asking for fair compensation for 7 years of my life. Support while I rebuild. The ability to maintain some semblance of the life we shared while I transitioned to independence. Thank you, Mrs. Calloway. You may be seated. Judge Winters put her glasses back on, reviewing her notes. The court will take a 30-minute recess while I consider my ruling. As the judge left the courtroom, the tension between the two tables was palpable. Jack remained seated, his expression composed. Jenny leaned close to her attorney, whispering urgently. Mira nudged Jack. She's good. The vulnerable act, the admission of mistakes while minimizing their significance. If the judge buys it, she won't, Jack said quietly. Winters has seen it all before. She'll see through it. When court reconvened 30 minutes later, Judge Winters returned with a stack of papers and a resolute expression. Having reviewed the evidence and heard from both parties, I'm prepared to issue my ruling, she began. This case presents a stark contrast in narratives. Mr. Calloway portrays a marriage built on deception and financial exploitation. Mrs. Calloway describes a conventional partnership that deteriorated due to emotional distance and misunderstandings. He shuffled her papers. After careful consideration of the evidence, I find Mr. Calloway's account more credible and substantiated. The documentation of Mrs. Calloway's spending is extensive and concerning. The evidence of her affair with Mr. Mitchell is conclusive. Most damning, however, are the emails discussing divorce strategy dating back to the early years of the marriage, which suggest premeditation rather than a response to marital problems. Jenny's face crumpled, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. Therefore, Judge Winters continued, I grant the divorce on the grounds petitioned by Mr. Calloway. Regarding asset distribution, I rule as follows. Mrs. Calloway shall retain her personal belongings, jewelry, and clothing. She shall receive a one-time payment of $100,000 to establish herself independently. All business assets, real estate, investments, and remaining financial accounts shall remain with Mr. Calloway. No ongoing alimony will be awarded. The judge looked directly at Jenny. This ruling reflects the court's finding that Mrs. Calloway entered this marriage with ulterior financial motives and engaged in behavior that constitutes both adultery and financial exploitation. While the court acknowledges that 7 years of marriage warrants some consideration, the nature of Mrs. Calloway's actions significantly reduces what might otherwise be considered a fair settlement. She turned to Jack. Mr. Calloway, while the court recognizes that you have been wronged, I must caution against using financial power as a weapon. The one-time payment ordered today is non-negotiable and must be paid within 30 days. Understood, Your Honor, Jack replied. This ruling is effective immediately. Divorce granted. Judge Winters brought down her gavel. Court dismissed. A mixture of relief and vindication washed over Jack as he stood. Across the aisle, Jenny stared at him in shock, her carefully applied makeup now streaked with tears. You can't do this to me, she cried, lunging forward only to be restrained by her attorney. I already did, Jack replied calmly. The difference is I had the law on my side. As they left the courtroom, Mira squeezed his arm. It's over, Jack. You won. Not quite, Jack replied. There's one more thing I need to do. 3 days after the court ruling, Jack sat in his home office, finalizing the wire transfer for Jenny's settlement. The amount, $100,000, was substantial to most people, but a fraction of what she had hoped to extract from him. More importantly, it was a one-time payment. No ongoing support, no continuing connection between them, a clean break, just as he'd wanted. Mira lounged in the leather chair across from his desk, scrolling through her phone. The gossip is finally dying down, she reported. New scandals have taken center stage. You're yesterday's news. Good, Jack said, hitting the final confirmation button on the transfer. Done. Payment sent, as ordered by the court. How does it feel? Mira asked, setting her phone aside. Is it everything you hoped for? Jack leaned back, considering the question. The raw pain of betrayal had subsided, replaced by a cold sense of justice served. It feels right. She tried to take everything from me. She failed. And the house. You're really selling it. Too many memories, Jack confirmed. The realtor already has 3 interested buyers. I'll move into the downtown apartment until I decide what's next. Mira nodded, understanding in her eyes. And Jenny? Any idea what she's doing now? According to my attorney, she's moved in with a cousin in the suburbs. Apparently, Celeste wouldn't take her in. Jack's mouth quirked in a humorless smile. Family loyalty only goes so far, it seems. Speaking of Celeste, Mira said, have you heard from her since the trial? One email, thanking me for not exposing her role more than necessary during the proceedings. Jack shook his head, as if her betrayal of her sister somehow makes her noble. Birds of a feather, Mira murmured. Jack nodded, then turned to his computer again. There's one more thing I need to do before I can truly put this behind me. He opened a blank document and began to type. Jenny, by the time you read this, the court-mandated settlement will have been transferred to your account. This completes all legal and financial obligations between us. You once told your sister that I was pathetic, that you faked every smile, that I was like a trained dog, loyal and blind and stupid. You were right about one thing. I was blind. But I see clearly now, you faked every smile. I faked every ounce of forgiveness. You played a role. So did I. The difference is, I played mine better. Enjoy your new life. I certainly intend to enjoy mine. Jackie read it over once. then printed it on his personal stationery. After signing it with a steady hand, he sealed it in an envelope and addressed it to Jenny's new residence. "Want me to mail that?" Mira offered as he rose from his desk. Jack shook his head. "No, this one I need to do myself." They drove in comfortable silence to the post office. Jack dropped the letter into the outgoing mail slot, watching it disappear with a sense of finality. One last message. One last connection severed. As they returned to the car, his phone buzzed with an email notification. Jack glanced at it, then showed the screen to Mira with a wry smile. "Ryan Mitchell," he read aloud. "Subject, we need to talk." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" "Not a chance," Jack replied, deleting the email without opening it. Some bridges deserve to burn. They drove back to Jack's house, soon to be someone else's house, in companionable silence. As they pulled into the driveway, Mira turned to him. "So what now?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Jack considered the question, looking at the house that had once represented everything he thought he wanted. Now it was just a structure, a shell that had contained a lie. "Now," he said, a small but genuine smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks, "I finally live." 6 months later, Jack stood on the balcony of his new penthouse, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold and amber. The gentle spring breeze carried the scent of the potted herbs he'd started growing, a small hobby discovered in the aftermath of his divorce. Behind him, the sounds of quiet conversation and laughter drifted from his living room. A small gathering of friends, real friends, people who had stood by him through the darkest days, had assembled to celebrate the launch of his company's newest project. Mira joined him on the balcony, handing him a glass of whiskey. "Hiding from your own party?" Taking a moment, Jack corrected, accepting the drink. "It's been a busy few months." "That's an understatement," Mira replied. "New home, company expansion, that charity foundation you started. You've barely stopped to breathe." Jack sipped his whiskey, savoring the burn. "I had time to make up for. Years spent living someone else's version of my life." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk deepened. "Heard anything from her?" Mira finally asked, her tone casual but careful. Jack shook his head. "Not directly. My attorney mentioned she's left the city. Moved to Chicago, apparently." "Good riddance," Mira muttered. "Indeed." Jack turned, leaning against the railing to face his friend. "Thank you, by the way." Mira raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For being there. For helping me see clearly when I was at my lowest. For making sure I didn't just curl up and take it." A smile touched Myra's lips. "That's what friends are for." Besides, watching Jenny get exactly what she deserved was its own reward. Jack laughed, a genuine sound that had become more frequent in recent months. "You always did have a vindictive streak." "I prefer to call it a justice streak," Mira corrected, clinking her glass against his. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Jack echoed. Their moment was interrupted by one of the guests calling Mira inside to settle a friendly debate. She excused herself. Leaving Jack alone with his thoughts once more, he turned back to the view, reflecting on the journey of the past 8 months. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared entirely. Such wounds never healed without scars, but it had transformed into something else. Something almost like gratitude. Jenny's betrayal had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths, to rebuild himself from the ground up. In destroying what he thought was his life, she had inadvertently freed him to discover what his life could actually be. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jack pulled it out to find a text from his realtor. Final paper for the old house, signed by new owners today. Officially closed, another chapter completed. Another tie severed. He typed back a quick thanks, then silenced his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. The past could wait. Tonight was about the future. Jack finished his whiskey and turned back toward the warmth and laughter spilling from his living room. These were the people who mattered now. Friends who had proven their loyalty, colleagues who respected his work rather than his wallet. He stepped inside. Mira caught his eye from across the room, raising her glass in a silent toast. Jack returned the gesture, a sense of peace settling over him for the first time in longer than he could remember. He had survived Jenny's betrayal not just intact, but stronger, more discerning, more authentically himself. In trying to break him, she had only succeeded in breaking his illusions. And for that, in the strangest way, he had his ruthless reckoning to thank.